What we're going to look at now are characteristics of polynomials. Particularly, we're going to focus on intervals where the graph is increasing, where it's decreasing, when it's above, when it's y is greater than 0, or when it's above the x-axis, y is less than 0, or when it's below the x-axis. So I made two graphs here. They're the exact same, but I want to trace it so you can kind of see what we're looking at. So when we're looking at where a graph is increasing, what you want to do is just trace your finger, trace your pencil along the graph. Now, when it's increasing, then what's going to happen is as you're tracing it, it should be going up. Then when it's decreasing, then the graph will be moving down. So if we're looking at this example of where the graph is, let's start with increasing. We see that it's increasing in this interval right here. Now, the directions say describe the x values for which f is increasing or decreasing, and when f of x is greater than 0, or y is greater than 0, and f of x is less than 0. So we're looking for the x values. So we see that the x value where it starts is here at -2, and then to 0. So what we can write, and we'll write this in set notation, is that x, it's increasing when x is between -2 and 0. So now let's look at where the function is decreasing. And so there's two spots where that is happening. It's going down on that left side and going down on this right side. So just using, again, our set notation is we're going to look at the x values. So where it's decreasing is when it's left or less than -2. So it's decreasing when x is less than -2, right? Here's the -2. It's decreasing when it's less than that. And then it's also decreasing on the right. So that is when x is greater than 0. Okay, so decreasing when x is less than -2 and x is greater than 0. And notice they really do focus on the same values that we looked at for our increasing. So now let's look at when y, or f of x, is greater than 0. And we're going to look at that in our other graph. So y is greater than 0 is here when it's above the x-axis. So that x value is -4. So we can say that the graph is greater than 0 when x is less than -4. Okay, x is less than -4. Then when it's below the x-axis, it is going to be here. And then it actually touches the x-axis again. So technically at the spot that it touches the x-axis, it's not below or above. So we have to notate that when we write it as our answer. So let's say y is less than 0. So we can say in this interval here between -4 and 0, so that is when x is between -4 and x is 0. And then it's still below the x-axis past that point. So therefore, x, it's also less than 0 when x is greater than 0. Now we've talked a little bit about interval notation. And so I'm going to write these in interval notation just so you see it. So increasing, it's still within this interval between -2 and 0, and everything is going to be on the open interval. We'll say at where it changes, it's not technically increasing or decreasing, for example, at those points. So we're just going to always put parentheses here. Then when x is less than -2 here, so that interval we would say is between -∞ and -2. And so union, it also occurs when x is greater than 0 to +∞. Then let's take a look at when it's above the x-axis. So here, so we have the arrow. It is from -∞ to -4. And then looking at the intervals where it's below the x-axis, it'll be between -4 0, and also when x is greater than 0, so from 0 to infinity. So go ahead and try to fill out the increasing, decreasing when y is greater than 0, y is less than 0 for this graph, just to try it out. Okay, here are the answers. So it's increasing between -3 and 0, and here are the two options with set notation or interval notation. It's decreasing when x is less than -3 and when x is greater than 0. When it's above the x-axis is when x is less than -4, and between -2 and 3, that is when it's above the x-axis. Then below the x-axis, when f of x is less than 0, it'll be when x is between -4 and -2, and again from x is greater than 3.